Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Be sure to check out Dragon Shield for all of the best accessories to protect your decks. TCG Player for cards at great prices while supporting local game stores. And Patreon, where you get awesome benefits for your direct support. Our Patreon Discord CEDH Webcam League is in full swing this month. We are giving away $1,000 in cash prizes. All you have to do is sign up to Patreon at any tier to gain access. Check us out on Twitch every Wednesday evening for great games of CEDH with special guests every week. If you sub to Twitch, you'll get additional perks such as access to our Discord. On February 26th, we are hosting a CEDH tournament on our Discord. It will be 100% proxy friendly and there is over $1,200 in cash prizes. All you have to do to participate in the tournament is sign up to our Patreon. Whenever we host a webcam league on our Discord, we record the top 4 to be on an episode of Playing with Power. That's what this game is tonight. Last season's league winners will now battle it out with some of the decks they piloted to get into the top 4. If you want to be on an episode, sign up for Patreon for this month's league going on until the end of January. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Fonzie piloting Keurig, son of Yawgmoth. This deck seeks to storm off using Keurig to enable fast combos not typically seen in CEDH. Fonzie's opening hand contains a Praetor's Grasp, Necromancy, Balthor the Defiled, 3 Swamps, and a Jet Medallion. Next, we have Bruce piloting Koll the Forge Master. This mid-range deck looks to use equipment and other artifacts to generate value and control the game. Bruce's opening hand contains a Dockside Extortionist, Silence, Gamble, Inspiring Vantage, Forbidden Orchard, Final Fortune, and a Stoneforge Mystic. After that, we have Greg piloting the partner pair of Thrasios Triton Hero and Vial Smasher the Fierce. This deck, he calls Build-A-Bear Workshop, is a shell of Curious Control, and it seeks to control the board while generating card advantage through its commanders and cards like Curiosity. Greg's opening hand contains a Soul Ring, Swan Song, Force of Will, Resculpt, Exotic Orchard, Volcanic Island, and a Demonic Tutor. Finally, we have Zane piloting Ramos Dragon Engine. This list seeks to use cards like Bolus's Citadel to win the game through storm lines. Zane's opening hand contains a Mana Crypt, Jeweled Lotus, Wheel of Fortune, Volcanic Island, Polluted Delta, Veil of Summer, and his London Mulligan is a Windfall. Without further ado, let's quickly question the Quandary Quarters of Quiet. Fonzie wins the Happy Days Lookalike contest and gets to start us off. Fonzie draws a card for turn and plays a Swamp. He passes. Bruce draws a card for turn and plays an Inspiring Vantage. He casts a Crookshank Kobolds. He shifts the turn to Greg. Greg draws and plays an Exotic Orchard. He casts a Soul Ring. He gives the turn to Zane. Zane draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts a Jeweled Lotus. He casts a Mana Crypt. He casts his commander, Ramos Dragon Engine. In response, Greg casts Force of Will, paying 1 life and exiling Resculpt. Ramos is countered, and with nothing else, Zane passes the turn. Fonzie draws and plays a Swamp. He casts Jet Medallion. He passes. Bruce draws and plays a Forbidden Orchard. He taps Forbidden Orchard, giving Zane a Spirit to cast Stoneforge Mystic. It enters and Bruce fetches up a Skull Clamp into his hand. He gives the turn to Greg. During his upkeep, Greg casts Vampiric Tutor. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts Rhystic Study. The table laughs, as that's Greg's signature card, and he ships the turn to Zane. During his upkeep, Zane wins his Mana Crypt roll. He draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He casts Wheel of Fortune. Rhystic triggers and Greg draws. Wheel resolves and everyone discards their hand and draws a new 7. Zane cracks his Polluted Delta, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He passes the turn. Fonzie draws and floats mana and sacrifices a Swamp to play Lake of the Dead. He floats another mana before sacrificing his last Swamp to Lake of the Dead, generating 4 more black. He pays 6 life to help cast his commander, Keurig, son of Yawgmoth, paying the Rhystic tax. He pays 4 life through Keurig to help cast Final Parting. Rhystic triggers and Greg draws. Keurig triggers and gets a +1/+1 counter. He fetches up 2 cards, putting 1 into his hand and Asmodeus the Archfiend into his graveyard. He pays 2 life through Keurig to cast Blood Celebrant. Rhystic triggers, Greg draws, Keurig triggers, and gets a counter. He pays 7 life through Blood Celebrant and Keurig to cast Mastermind's Acquisition. Greg draws through Rhystic, and Keurig gets another counter. He fetches up a card into his hand. He pays 2 life through Keurig to cast Unmarked Grave. Rhystic triggers, and he pays 3 life through Blood Celebrant to pay for it. Keurig triggers and gets another counter. Unmarked Grave resolves, and he fetches up a Scourge Familiar into his graveyard. He pays 7 life to cast Necrotic Ooze, paying 3 life through Blood Celebrant to pay for Rhystic. Keurig triggers and gets another counter. Since Necrotic Ooze now has all activated abilities of creatures in graveyards and none of the static abilities, Fonzie is now able to activate Asmodeus through Necrotic Ooze and activate Scourge Familiar through Necrotic Ooze. He discards 3 cards through Scourge Familiar's ability to add 3 black. He pays 3 black to draw 7 cards through Asmodeus' ability. He presents a loop of discarding 3 cards to add 3 black and then draw 7. Using this loop, he can draw the cards in his deck. He casts Defense Grid, paying for Rhystic. In response, Zane exiles Simian Spirit Guide to help cast Brain Freeze, targeting Fonzie, not paying for Rhystic. It resolves and Fonzie mills 21 cards. Fonzie continues to draw and discard cards through Necrotic Ooze. He adds a black through Scourge Familiar and casts Entomb. He fetches up a Chainer, Dementia Master, into his graveyard. He adds 3 more black through Scourge to help cast Diabolic Tutor. He fetches up a card into his hand. He adds 4 more black through Scourge and casts Grey Merchant of Asphodel. Rhystic triggers and Greg draws. It enters and each opponent loses 8 and Fonzie gains 24. He pays 9 life through Keurig to activate Chainer, reanimating Dimir Houseguard. Now he presents a loop, sacrificing Grey Merchant, paying 9 life via Keurig to activate Chainer's ability, reanimating Grey Merchant to the battlefield. Each time Grey Merchant enters, his opponents lose 9 and he gains 27. He repeats this loop, draining each opponent, and Fonzie wins the game. Well, since that was such a quick game, let's do another, shall we? In this game, Bruce brings back Koll, and his opening hand contains a Rugged Prairie, Rite of Flame, Steel Shaper's Gift, Crimson Kobolds, Spectator Seating, and his London Mulligans are an Open the Armory and an Ephemerate. Greg brings back Thrasios and Vial Smasher, and his opening hand contains an Opposition Agent, Birds of Paradise, Mental Misstep, Mana Confluence, Command Tower, Counterspell, and his London Mulligan is a Tropical Island. Zane brings back Ramos, and his opening hand contains a Command Tower, Imperial Seal, Rite of Flame, Bloodstained Mire, and his London Mulligans are a Wooded Foothills, Felwar Stone, and a Deathrite Shaman. Fonzie brings back Keurig, and his opening hand contains an Ancient Tomb, Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, Necrotic Ooze, Animate Dead, Wishclaw Talisman, Peer into the Abyss, and a Bolas the Citadel. And Bruce gets to start us off. Bruce draws and plays a Spectator Seating. He casts Crimson Kobolds. He casts Steel Shaper's Gift. He fetches up a Skull Clamp into his hand. He passes the turn. Greg draws and plays a Command Tower. He casts Birds of Paradise. He passes. Zane draws and also plays a Command Tower. He casts Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He gives the turn to Fonzie. Fonzie draws and plays an Ancient Tomb. He ships the turn. Bruce draws and plays a Rugged Prairie. He casts Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts Skull Clamp. In response, Greg pays 2 life to cast Mental Misstep, countering Skull Clamp. Next, Bruce casts Goblin Recruiter. It resolves and he fetches up a Goblin Welder and a Goblin Engineer onto the top of his library. He ships the turn. Greg draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps his Confluence to help cast his commander, Thrasios, Triton Hero. He casts Training Grounds and passes the turn. Zane draws and plays a Bloodstained Mire. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an Underground Sea onto the battlefield. He casts Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts a Wheel of Fortune. Each player discards their hand and draws 7. Zane exiles Elvish Spirit Guide to add a green. He casts Soul Ring. He casts Grim Monolith. He casts Lion's Eye Diamond. He gives the turn to Fonzie. Fonzie draws and plays a City of Traders. He taps his Ancient Tomb and pays 6 life to help cast his commander, Keurig, Son of Yawgmoth. He pays 2 life through Keurig to cast Reanimate, targeting Necrotic Ooze. Necrotic Ooze enters and Fonzie loses 4 life. He passes. Bruce draws and plays a Sunbaked Canyon. He taps his Sunbaked Canyon to help cast Goblin Welder. He casts his commander, Koll the Forge Master. He gives the turn to Greg. Greg draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He taps his Mana Confluence to help cast an Arcane Signet. He casts Dampening Sphere. The table groans, and Greg passes. Zane draws and then casts his commander, Ramos, Dragon Engine. He ships the turn. Fonzie draws and plays a Swamp. City of Traders triggers and he sacrifices it. He moves to combat and attacks Greg with Keurig. Greg takes it, Fonzie gains 3, and then Fonzie passes the turn. Bruce draws and plays a City of Brass. He taps Sunbaked Canyon to help cast Relic Seeker. He passes. At the end of Bruce's turn, Greg cracks his Polluted Delta, pays a life, and fetches up a Watery Grave onto the battlefield tapped. Greg draws and plays a Flooded Strand. He ships the turn. Zane draws and plays a Tropical Island. He casts Windfall. Ramos triggers, and in response, Fonzie pays 4 life to cast Snuff Out, targeting Thrasios. Keurig triggers, and in response, Greg casts Swan Song, targeting Snuff Out. Swan Song counters Snuff Out, Fonzie gets a 2/2 bird, Keurig gets a 1/1 counter, Ramos gets a 1/1 counter, and then Windfall resolves. Each player discards their hands, including Fonzie, who discards Villas, Broker of Blood, and then everyone draws 5. Zane moves to combat and attacks Greg with Ramos. Greg takes it, and Zane passes. Fonzie draws and starts off his turn by tapping his Ancient Tomb and paying 4 life through Keurig to help cast Vial and Tumor. Keurig triggers and gets a counter. It enters, and Fonzie fetches up an Asmodeus the Archfiend into his graveyard. With Asmodeus in the graveyard, he pays 6 life through Keurig to activate Asmodeus through Necrotic Ooze to draw 7 cards. In response, Greg taps his Mana Confluence to help cast Notion Thief. In response, Fonzie pays 6 life to draw 7 cards. Notion Thief resolves, and with the original ability still on the stack, Fonzie pays 4 to activate Villas's ability through Necrotic Ooze. Notion Thief gets -1/-1, dies, and the table sighs. Asmodeus' ability resolves and Fonzie draws 7. He plays a Swamp. He attacks Zane with Keurig and Necrotic Ooze. Zane takes it and Fonzie gains 5 life. In his second main phase, Fonzie pays 2 life through Keurig to cast Vampiric Tutor. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He pays 6 life to activate Necrotic Ooze, drawing 7 cards. He passes, discarding to hand size, which includes a Scourge Familiar. The table shivers and Fonzie passes to Bruce. During Bruce's upkeep, Fonzie responds by activating Scourge Familiar through Necrotic Ooze, discarding 3 cards and adding 3 black. He activates Asmodeus through Necrotic Ooze, drawing 7 cards. He presents a loop of discarding 3 to add 3 black and then drawing 7. He does this over and over until he discards Grey Merchant of Asphodel and Chainer Nightmare Adept. He discards 3 cards to help flash in a Necromancy targeting Grey Merchant. It enters and each opponent loses 10 and Fonzie gains 30. He continues this loop until he discards Dimir Houseguard. Now he presents a loop of sacrificing Grey Merchant using Dimir Houseguard's ability through Necrotic Ooze, then reanimating it using the activated ability of Chainer. With this loop, he's able to drain the table, and Fonzie wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 games in a row with a mono black deck. Fonzie had such a strong start to both games. He had many ways to play around the stacks pieces that usually punish Storm decks. Using activated abilities instead of slinging spells really makes it difficult to interact via normal means. The most valuable card in tonight's game goes to Keurig, Son of Yawgmoth. While we were definitely considering Necrotic Ooze, it was Keurig that really pushed this deck over the top. Being able to trade your life for mana is an amazing ability. Phyrexian mana was definitely a mistake, and this commander shows it off in true fashion. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of the competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.